So let's start. Introduction to public procurement. Before I start, it's always important to know that if you want to get my videos, you can just look for my name, Daniel Misita, on YouTube, to be able to get more videos. So the same. And remember to subscribe and like. The introduction to public procurement. As we said earlier, public procurement plays a very critical role in most organizations. And for organizations to be able to remain competitive, they must be able to implement public procurement successfully. So before we jump into public procurement, it is also very important to understand what procurement is. So procurement is an activity or function that involves acquisition by purchase, rental lease, hire purchase, license, tenancy, franchise, or by any other contractual means of any type of works, asset, service, or goods to meet identified need. So when you look at all those, you realize that you must enter into a contract with maybe your suppliers. For example, when you look at purchase is when you go, you want to buy something, and you are able to identify a supplier. So once the supplier is able to deliver, then you can pay the supplier. When you look at rental, for example, you can rent a building. And once you rent a building, then it means you must pay for maybe you can rent a property, you can rent a building, you can rent anything, or even a printer. And at the end of the day, you must pay for that service. Then we have lease. Lease is the same as rental, but lease is long-term in nature, where you lease a property for a very long time, maybe 5 years or even 10 years, depending on your agreement. Hire purchase is when you pay something in installments until that thing is fully paid. And we have license is where maybe you must require a license for purposes of doing something, and you have to pay for that license. Tenancy is the same as maybe rental, but tenancy is just when you enter into an agreement with the tenants. Then we have franchise. Franchise is when you use somebody's name to do business, and at the end of the day, you must pay for the royalties. Maybe you are using somebody's else's name to do your business. And a very common way, or a good example, is Carrefour. Carrefour is a franchise in Kenya, where at the end of the month, they have to pay the amount to the mother branch, which is I think in France. Then any other contractor means where you procure for works, assets, services, goods, or any other thing for purposes of meeting a certain need. So having understood what is procurement, is also very important to understand what is public procurement. And public procurement is the acquisition of systems, goods, services, or works at the best possible total cost of ownership, in the right quantity, at the right time, and in the right place for the direct benefit use of the government, corporations, or individual, via but not limited to a contract. So in government, for example, let's look at an example of the Ministry of Labor, for example. Maybe they want to start a certain project, and that project will be classified as a work. So they have to ensure that they look for suppliers who are going to provide the right quality, the right quantity, and they're going to do a very good job. Therefore, it means for you to be able to practice public procurement, you must be in government. Remember, we also have the private procurement practice, where private firms are also doing procurement. But public procurement here, the main focus is public entities. Public entities can either be government, can either be department of government, or they can also be parastatals or authorities. When you look at the Public Procurement Asset Disposal Act, We've been able to classify public entities to different categories. For example, we have public schools, we have public hospitals, we have public universities, we have corporations, we have authorities, we have commissions, and others. When you talk about acquisition can either be in-house using internal providers, or you can also decide to use third party. Third parties are organizations that have been hired by the main organization to be able to perform duties to that organization. For example, if today you wanted to get services of IT, you can decide to use third party who will come to your organization. And by virtue of being in your organization, they're able to perform duties. And at the end of the day, you'll pay for that service. In the context of procurement process, the main focus is to be able to get best value for money. So the main focus of public procurement is to be able to get value for your money. When we talk about value for money, then it means you don't overspend or you don't overquote so that you benefit at the end of the day. Public procurement is all about getting value for your money. For example, if today you wanted to buy a printer that is going to be used in your organization, then it means you must be able to get a printer that is going to serve you in the best way possible. You need to get a printer that will help you be able to maximize your potential within the organization. Maybe you can come up with a specification that will help you to get the best printer that is able to perform various tasks. And therefore, by so doing, you'll be able to get a printer that will give you value for your money. So what is the objective of public procurement? When we talk about objectives of public procurement, this is what procurement is going to achieve at the end of the day. One of the objectives of public procurement is to be able to maximize efficiency. And efficiency here, we are looking at services. And when you're performing your tasks in public procurement, you need to look at how efficient are you going to be. And efficiency here is basically on the process that you're going to use. And remember, that is why we have a whole regulation that is emphasizing on efficiency. You must follow the process to the letter so that at the end of the day, you become objective in process that you're going to do. The other thing that is very critical is to promote fair competition. And when we talk about fair competition, we mean that every person that wants to procure, or every person, or every supplier, or any other person who is interested in procurement is given a chance. And that is why the most recommended method of procurement is open tendering. Because in open tendering, you give people a chance to be able to participate fairly and fairly. The other objective of public procurement is to promote integrity. And integrity here, we are saying, is always important to do the right thing. Maybe I can pose a question to you. What is integrity in your own understanding? Yes, me, ma'am.
It's doing something, it's being honest even when no one is watching you. It's slightly different from accountability, because like accountability is when you are needed to report on something, then you do how it's supposed to be done. But integrity is being honest even when no one is watching you.
Okay, this is good. You need the other person who can say something. Mike? What is your understanding on integrity?
Being honest when someone else is not watching.
Okay, Alan. Integrity basically is doing the right thing, regardless of who is watching you. No, we have some people who like doing something because the other person is looking at them, so that they can get mileage within in the organization. The other objective of public procurement, the other objective of public procurement is to increase transparency and accountability and promote local industries. So what do we mean when we say increase transparency? Transparency basically is in the process of procurement. When you want to procure something, you must ensure you follow the process to the letter. Always be transparent in your operation so that people will not start questioning your integrity. And the issue of accountability is where somebody must be answerable. And that is why we have the accounting officers within various ministries who must be answerable. For example, when you look at ministries, the accounting officer is the principal secretary who must be answerable. Even within your department, you also need to be very accountable so that at the end of the day, in the event something happens, you must give reasons as to why it happened. If that is the case, then you need to be very careful with what you do. Particularly when you're in procurement, you must not sign everything. So you also need to question every time they tell you to sign. Then the other thing is to promote local industries. When we talk about promoting local industries, the government of the day has been able to come up with various marketing strategies to be able to promote local industries. And that is why it's always important before you can float a tender to maybe international tenders, also need to look at the local capacities. We have capacity within the national government or the county government so that you can promote the local industries. I can see the president went to US, I think this week or last week, and they went to also promote Kenya. They opened a branch there of Vivo so that the main focus was to promote the local industries, build Kenya, make Kenya. The other objective is to optimize costs by lowering transaction cost and overhead cost. Every time you hear the government say they don't have money, and one of the reasons is to be able to minimize costs. And by minimizing costs, they are able to buy what is necessary, and the others can still wait. So you only buy what you feel is very critical to the operation of your organization. Another objective is to utilize assets by outsourcing and inventory management. So it is always important to utilize your assets. Asset is maybe the things that you own. You need to look at them and be able to maximize. You can also decide to outsource. Where you feel this thing is not critical, you can decide to outsource. And outsourcing is where you look for another organization to be able to do non-core activities. And non-core activities are activities just a minute. So non-core activities are activities that are not the main activities. For example, activities like photocopying, activities like maybe washing or making tea. So those are non-core activities. So you can decide to outsource, and also do what is called inventory management. And inventory management is putting your inventory in order so that people do not waste, or you don't have wastages when it comes to usage. And the other objective is to create value through process, product development, and quality improvement. So you need to create value on your processes. And that is why it is always recommended that we need to have continuous improvement every time in our processes. And that is why you look at the government every time they are coming up with the various maybe processes like implementing technology in most of their activities. And that is why we have the Huduma centers in place, so that they can simplify some of these processes and create value at the end of the day. The other issue is product development, where the government of the day is coming up with new products. And these products basically is to be able to look at ways on how they can also come up with extra revenue to be able to run the operations within the public entities. An example of a product that the government developed, any product that you think the government has developed over the last one year? Yes? Mike, any product? Mimam?
Sorry, I didn't get the question. Please come again.
I was talking about product development. And one of the focus areas of government is to be able to develop products. So I'm asking, is there a product that the government has developed for the last 1 year that you know of?
None that I can think of at the moment.
Yes, Michael, do you have any? Alan? Hiyo ni assignment, mwende mfikirie. Then we have quality improvement also is very critical. As much as you want to create value, you also need to look at issues of quality. And quality is relative. What is good for me might not be good for the other person. Therefore, it is always important to be very cautious when you want to create value at the end of the day. Then the other thing, or the other objective of government, is to facilitate the promotion of local industries and economic development. Local industries, for example, when you look at an institution like Rio Valley is an agricultural ministry, or what can I say? It is a parastatal that deals with agriculture. They've been able to develop products like honey, products like jam, things like that. So the main focus is to be able to promote local industries. So when they produce, they are able to empower even the farmers in that area. And farmers are also able to empower other people. And once they do that, then it means at the end of the day, we will have what is called economic development. Economic development. Any question? So if there's no question, the other thing we are going to talk about today is evolution of public procurement in Kenya. When we talk about evolution of public procurement in Kenya, we are talking about the steps that public procurement has undergone over the years. And remember, public procurement has been there for a very long time. And it started way back in the pre-colonial era. And that is between 1947 to 1962. And that period is called the colonial period, which is after the Second World War. Then we also have the post-colonial period, which was between 1963 and 1989. And this is the period after Kenya got its independence, where now many activities were transferred from Crown to the government through the Ministry of Public Works and the Ministry of Finance. Then we have the World Bank period. This is a period between 1990 to 2000. And during this period, there was a review that was done by World Bank. And there were some findings that World Bank came. Maybe there were some reviews about public procurement that they were able to identify. And they gave recommendations. Then we also have public procurement reforms period that is between 2001 to 2009. And here is when they introduced things like the exchequer. They came up with the act, that is Public Procurement Asset Disposal Act of 2005, and the regulation in 2006. They also came up with the Public Finance Management Act of 2009. They also came up with the Public-Private Partnership Act of 2009 and others. Then we also have the period between 2010 to what we are currently experiencing. And that is the new constitution, the era of the new constitution. And they normally say the constitution is the mother of all the laws. So let's jump into understanding more about the various periods. So in 1959, we had the Procurement and Transport Department, which was established under the Ministry of Works, Public Works, which dealt with the acquisition and supply of goods, works, and services. Those ones you can read. 1960, Treasury issued a finance regulation under the ministry. So those are just in the notes, you'll be able to read them and understand them. So what I want to talk about basically are some of the reasons that led to the reforms in public procurement. And one of the weaknesses that were identified during the period between 1980 and 1989 was lack of accountability. And accountability, we are saying some people must be accountable. People must be answerable in the actions that you do. You must be able to answer. So in the event you don't answer, then you must be taken to court so that you tell us what happened. Then issues like vague procurement procedures and policies. There were no clear policies or regulations during that time. And people took advantage of the system and they were able to loot a lot of money. And this led to issues like corruption by public officers. And that is why most public officers during that time were able to amass a lot of wealth because of the procedures that were not clear. The other thing was lack of structures, where there was no clear structure. Who was to report to who was supposed to do what at what time. And when you look at the act, they came up with the organization of public procurement, where we have the accounting officer, who is the CEO of different organizations. And with the CEO is the one who is supposed to sign all the contracts in public entities. So that at the end of the day, if something bad happens, the accounting officer must be answerable. Then we also have the procurement department, which is well structured nowadays, and they are the ones who are supposed to coordinate issues of procurement of goods, works, and services. Then we also have the finance department, which is supposed to release funds that is going to be very critical. And when you look at the structure also, you realize that before any procurement is done, you must be able to have a procurement plan. Every financial year, you must come up with a plan, what you're going to do with what you have been given in terms of budget. So you need to account for every coin that you are given so that you tell us what happened. Then issues of transparency also are very critical. And there was lack of transparency in most of these institutions. Just a minute. Then lack of dispute resolution was also a problem. In the event there was dispute, what was going to happen? So there was no clear framework that was going to be used. The other thing that was very critical was poor planning. There was a lot of issues to do with planning. Then lack of checks and balances also was a weakness that was also identified. So those were some of the reasons. The other thing that was also very common is the review that was done by World Bank. And the World Bank also identified some weaknesses. And one of the weaknesses was inefficiency in management, public funds. So there was a lot of wastages in public funds, and that was a very, very big problem. The other one was government's inability to provide service efficiently. And that is why when you look at 2 decades ago, there was an issue with how the government was giving service to people. But nowadays, because of technology, it is more accountable, where you just need to log in and you're able to get a snippet of what is happening to some of these government institutions. Then the other thing is lack of solid and transparent legal framework. So there was no rule that was governing most procurement in government institutions. Therefore, this led to the development of what we now have, that is the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal of 2005, which was reviewed in 2015. Then lack of fair competition, which makes it a serious abuse. So competition is very critical in government, so that once people are competing fairly, we'll be able to get value for money, because the person with the best products or the best price will take the day. So procurement reforms, one of the reforms was the Exchequer in 2001. And the Exchequer basically is under the National Treasury. They are the ones who do, or who are deal more with the Exchequer and the audit regulation. And in government also, we have a whole body, a whole institution that deals with audit. And that is called, I think, Kenya National Audit something. Then we also have law on public procurement and disposal, and that is what we use. We also have regulations in public procurement, which is the Public Procurement Disposal Asset Act of 2005. That was the first time it was implemented. Then we also have 2009, where we had the Public Procurement Practitioners Manual and Regulation of Public-Private Partnership Contracting. So the Public Procurement Practitioners Manual is what led to Kenya Institute of Supply Management. Then we have the Public Procurement and Disposal Regulation that was reviewed in 2015, I think. I'm not sure of that. The phase 5 is all about the Constitution. And under the Constitution, we have various articles that are very critical when it comes to procurement practitioners. And one of the acts is Article 2227 of the Constitution, which talks about procurement. We also have Article 55 and 56, which talks about preference and reservation, and other articles that are very critical. And one of the objectives of the Constitution is to be able to promote what is called national development goals, and also to ensure that various issues are implemented with a lot of fairness. People must be treated equitable. We have transparency and others. The other thing about the Constitution is issues of preference and reservation regulation. And here we are talking about various categories. And one of the categories are the women, the youths, and people living with disability. And when you are talking about this category, 30% of all procurement proceedings in government must go to this category of people. Then the Constitution also talked about the county governments. And remember, when you look at the structure of government today, the government is divided into two. We have the national government and we have the county government. The national government is normally where we have national county, National Assembly. Because your National Assembly is to ensure that government is up and running. They normally do some checks to the government. We also have the Senate, which takes into consideration the county government, and they do checks and balances to the county government. And we also have different circulars and guidelines that are very critical. We also have the Public Procurement Asset Disposal Act of 2015. We have 2020 regulation, and it was amended in 2022. Amended in 2022. Any question? So if you want to understand the history of public procurement,